Hello, I'm John Cullum. In this evening's ABC theater presentation of The Day After, I play a father in a typical American family who experienced the catastrophic events of a full-scale nuclear war. Before the movie begins, we would like to caution parents about the graphic depiction of nuclear explosions and their devastating effects. The emotional impact of these scenes may be unusually disturbing, and we are therefore recommending that very young children not be permitted to watch. In homes where young people are watching, we'd like to suggest that the family watch together so that parents can be on hand to answer questions and discuss issues raised by the movie. Immediately following The Day After, ABC will present a special edition of Viewpoint that will explore some of the political, military, and psychological aspects of the nuclear age. In a moment, The Day After.
Hey, you guys. TV in the 1980s was so very special. I wish I could properly explain to the younger generations just how integral to American pop culture that TV was during the Gen X childhood and teen years. 1980s TV was the catalyst for shared experiences, when tens of millions of people all across the country would watch the same TV show at the exact same time, and then gather around the water cooler at work or at the lunch table at school the next day to talk about what they watched. TV shows sparked cultural conversations about every topic you can think of. It didn't matter if it was a family sitcom, a glamorous primetime soap, a late night talk show, a cartoon, or an after school special. American audiences of all ages, races, and creeds constantly discussed and often argued about the memorable stories, important themes, and relatable characters that we watched every day on television. The cultural impact was enormous. Among this plethora of network TV programming in the 80s, there was something that emerged that captured the hearts and imaginations of audiences everywhere: the made for TV movie. Each one of the big three networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, gave us a mix of drama, romance, suspense, thrills, historical events, sci fi, disaster flicks, or horror each and every week throughout the 1980s via made for TV movies. These were not big budget spectacles. Instead, they were pretty grounded. They were usually intimate, socially conscious narratives that would tackle the struggles of everyday people and families while exploring complex social issues. Oftentimes, these movies would tackle topics that Hollywood avoided, and spotlighting these real issues is what made the made-for-TV movies so special. These stories were brought into your home for free. No trip to the video store or the movie theater was required. They created a communal experience, and it's something that really has no equal today. Hundreds of made-for-TV movies aired throughout the 1980s, and that makes them a perfect topic for this channel. I'm going to make videos about them all summer long, and I'm going to start today with a video about the very best, the most memorable TV movies from the 1980s that have stuck with me for decades. These movies deserve some love and recognition because they normalized television as a medium for serious storytelling. They proved that small screens could tell big stories and shine a light on societal issues. These movies laid the groundwork for the shows that came later via premium cable and streaming. Now, real quick before we get started, I want to make it clear that in this video I am only talking about movies that aired in the United States on one of the big three networks, and they were only on for one night. TV miniseries were a whole different animal, and I've already talked about them in these three videos here. Links in the description. So, without further ado, my name is Natalie, this is my so-called Gen X life, and here's my list of the 15 best and most memorable made-for-TV movies from the 1980s. This video is brought to you by me. I just wanted to take a quick second to tell you about my weekly live streams on Tuesday and Friday nights, where we chat about all things Gen X. We watch old videos, laugh at nostalgic social media posts, and reminisce about all the things we loved in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. If that sounds like a good time, all you gotta do is subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you know when I go live. And now, back to the video.
Tonight on the CBS Sunday Movie.
And yes, we've just begun.
She was the girl next door. one in a million.
That voice.
Caught in the harsh glare of rock superstardom.
Yeah, you believe this is every kid's dream? This is too much, too fast.
On January 1st, 1989, CBS aired The Karen Carpenter Story, a biographical film about singer Karen Carpenter, who is part of the pop music duo The Carpenters, along with her brother Richard. Cynthia Gibb played the role of Karen, and Mitchell Anderson took on the part of Richard, while the real-life Richard Carpenter served as a producer and composer of the musical score. He knew the movie was going to get made no matter what, and he figured it was best for him to be involved. Karen Carpenter was one of the greatest female vocalists of all time, but this movie isn't just about how she and her brother became one of the biggest hit makers of the 70s. Both siblings faced personal struggles behind the scenes. For Richard, it was pill addiction, and for Karen, it was anorexia nervosa. For many people, Karen's sudden death in February 1983 at the age of 32 was the first time they had ever heard of anorexia. Her life story definitely needed to be told, and people absolutely wanted to see a movie about her. It was so insanely popular that it ended up being the highest rated 2-hour TV movie of 1989, and it was the third highest rated TV movie on any network in the entire decade. But there were some big issues on the set. Richard Carpenter's involvement made a huge impact on the final cut that audiences saw. His approval meant that the movie was able to use the Carpenters' music, including 2 previously unreleased singles, and that was absolutely a positive. But he requested that Gibb wear Karen's original clothing, which he supplied, and he also required Gibb to lose weight so she could fit into the clothes. He was watching over her constantly, lurking off camera while every scene was shot. Gibb said that because of Richard, the movie whitewashed the account of Karen's life. Because of him, information was watered down and some things were just completely taken out. Despite the studio having approved the original script, Richard demanded daily rewrites and had entire scenes removed. One crew member said, "Frankly, we were very glad that he didn't play himself. He was a pain in the backside, so oversensitive and close to the action he almost screwed things up. When we spotted him on his knees praying to Karen, he was saying, 'Forgive me, forgive me.' The misgivings he had were painfully obvious. You could also see him wrestling with things in his mind. It was as if he felt that Karen would have never approved. The guy just hasn't been able to let go, and now the film lacks an independent balance." Remember, the movie was made just 5 years after Karen's death. When it premiered, Richard Carpenter admitted that certain things were overblown and that his pill addiction and Karen's anorexia came across as melodramatic. He said, "We're dealing with a TV movie, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. And each little thing was not exactly the way it happened, that's all. But it's still a fairly accurate log of 20 years of our lives." However, by 2004, Richard had changed his tune. During an AMA on his website, he called the movie, quote, 90 minutes of creative license that give biopics in general a dubious tone. Ultimately, he says he was not pleased with the outcome. "It's not a good film. One of the biggest mistakes I ever made was agreeing to cooperate in the making of it. It brings to mind the old adage, the road to hell is paved with good intentions."
On the NBC.
Yes, number 14 is a double feature, High School USA and Poison Ivy. I couldn't decide between these two movies because they were both memorable and featured huge 80s TV sitcom stars, so I merged them into one entry on the list. First off, there's High School USA, which premiered on NBC on October 16th, 1983. This was a comedy that starred various actors from popular sitcoms, including Todd Bridges and Dana Plato from Different Strokes, Laurie Hendler from Gimme a Break, Crystal Bernard and Kathy Silvers from Happy Days, Nancy McKeon from The Facts of Life, and Michael J. Fox from Family Ties. But that's not all. The ensemble also featured Crispin Glover, who would later star as George McFly in Back to the Future, and Anthony Edwards, future star of Revenge of the Nerds, Top Gun, and the 90s TV drama ER.
You're Beth Franklin, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't see you.
Oh, no, I did that on purpose.
That's coffee anyway.
Watch out, watch out.
Keep out the undesirables. The price will be $100 per couple, $150 if you want to sit at my table. I believe all credit cards are accepted. Am I correct, Anne-Marie?
Major credit cards.
Maybe I should mess up your face, huh?
He's a nice guy. What was I supposed to do, hang up on him?
JJ and I'll straighten this whole thing out.
A week from today, before the fall dance, a race. Me against you, 1-on-1.
You're gonna use my dad's car?
Also in the cast were stars from 50s and 60s sitcoms like Tony Dow, Frank Bank, and Ken Osmond from Leave It to Beaver, Eleanor Donahue from Father Knows Best, Angela Cartwright from The Danny Thomas Show and Lost in Space, and Don Wells and Bob Denver from Gilligan's Island. This movie is all about the goings-on at Excelsior Union High School among the students and the teachers. It was so popular that they made a 1-hour pilot to turn it into a TV show, but it didn't include the teen stars. It aired over Memorial Day weekend in 1984, but it flopped hard, and NBC decided not to pick up the series. However, there was still a very interesting cast of classic TV stars in the pilot that included Ricky Nelson and Dick York in their final roles. I'll put a link to that lost pilot in the description if you're interested in checking it out. High School USA was where Fox and McKeon met and they started dating. Then they starred in another TV movie together called Poison Ivy. That movie premiered on NBC on February 10th, 1985, less than 5 months before Fox would be catapulted into worldwide fame when Back to the Future hit theaters on July 3rd. Poison Ivy is a romantic comedy that takes place at a boys' summer camp called Camp Pinewood. Fox plays a camp counselor who falls in love with the camp nurse, played by McKeon. He spends the summer trying to win her over, even though she is engaged. Is it a great movie? Absolutely not, but it's a fun slice-of-life comedy from the mid-'80s that I still adore, simply because of Fox and McKeon and the moment that it was made, when they were both young TV stars on 2 of my favorite shows.
Are you ready for summer camp?
Welcome to Pinewood.
Your days will be filled with water sports, nature appreciation, the great outdoors.
Parents' dream.
And it's your chance to discover
What is that?
the camp that separates the men from the boys.
Will be the most memorable, rewarding summer of our lives.
Robert Klein's in charge. So Michael J. Fox and Nancy McKeon are in Poison Ivy, next on Channel 7.
A Stoning in Fulham County aired on NBC on October 24th, 1988, and this is a memorable one for a few reasons. Most notably, it was the first credited movie role for Brad Pitt. The movie is a clash of religious beliefs that takes place in a fictional county in North Carolina, but it is loosely based on a real-life case that happened in 1979 in Adams County, Indiana, when an Amish baby named Adeline Schwartz was killed by a group of reckless teens. In addition to Pitt, A Stoning in Fulham County also stars Ken Olin from 30-something, Jill Eikenberry from LA Law, and Ron Perlman from Beauty and the Beast. Perlman plays Jacob Schuler, an Amish man whose infant daughter is killed when a group of non-Amish teenagers throw rocks at him and his family. Olin plays the county prosecutor who wants to go after the people who committed the crime, but holding them responsible becomes difficult when the Schulers don't want to press charges due to their faith. The only person to actually see the boys who did it is Schuler's little girl. He doesn't want her questioned by the police or put on the witness stand in court. To see how the story plays out, you can watch this one here on YouTube, and there is a link to it in the description.
When AIDS hits home,
AIDS is that disease
it hits at the heart.
No!
He's our son, for God's sake.
What Does a Family Do? A world movie premiere you can't miss. Ben Gazzara, Jenna Rollins, and Early Frost, Monday.
An Early Frost premiered on NBC on November 11th, 1985, and it was the first made-for-TV movie with stars from the big screen to deal with the topic of AIDS. The cast included Aidan Quinn, Gina Rollins, Ben Gazzara, Sylvia Sidney, and Bill Paxton. 34 million people tuned in to watch this movie, and it topped the ratings that night. It even beat out Monday Night Football, which was a big deal in the TV world back in the 1980s. Quinn played Chicago attorney Michael Pearson, and the movie follows him as he goes home to tell his parents, played by Gazzara and Rollins, that he is gay and has AIDS. During the mid-80s, that diagnosis was still a death sentence. An Early Frost was nominated for 14 Emmys and won 3, including one for Outstanding Writing in a Special. It also snagged a Peabody Award and multiple Golden Globes. However, NBC lost $500,000 in revenue because advertisers were hesitant to sponsor the movie. They didn't want their ads in the commercial breaks. The script spent 2 years in development and went through 13 rewrites before the network's Standards and Practices division gave it the green light. An Early Frost conveyed the prejudices at the time surrounding HIV and AIDS. It also tackled the general public's misconceptions and their limited understanding of the topic. Things like methods of transmission and the likelihood of infection were addressed, and that led critics to call it the most important TV movie of the year. A Bunny's Tale aired on ABC on February 26, 1985, and it starred Kirstie Alley as journalist Gloria Steinem before her days as a prominent social political activist. It's the TV movie version of Steinem's article titled A Bunny's Tale that was published in Show magazine in 1963 about her experiences working as a bunny at the Playboy Club in New York City. In both the TV movie and the article, Steinem covertly brings her second-wave feminism to Hugh Hefner's nightclub chain by working undercover and posing as a young girl named Marie. She goes through the bunny training program, which includes a physical and a gynecological exam, learns the Playboy method of serving drinks, the famous bunny dip, and is outfitted with bunny ears and a tail that accessorized her revealing bunny costume, which is zipped up so tightly it was a miracle that she could breathe. The bunnies also had to work in 3-inch heels, dyed to match their costume, and the girls had to pay for it all themselves. With promises of earning $200 to $300 per week, which was double the average salary back in those days, Steinem gets a first-hand look at what it's like to be a sex object in the early 60s. From her point of view, the men were all super sleazy and extremely bad tippers because the girls were really only making around $50 per week. And even though Hefner had a look but don't touch policy in his clubs, the customers couldn't seem to keep their hands off. Starring alongside Alley was Joanna Kearns. This was the same year that Growing Pains premiered on ABC. There was also Delta Burke before Designing Women, Too Close for Comfort star Deborah Van Valkenburg, and future Waiting to Exhale star Layla Rashawn.
The following program deals with incest and its painful consequences. It focuses on awareness, communication, and treatment for affected parents and children. The family is encouraged to view together. However, due to sensitive subject matter, parental discretion is advised. Tonight, ABC presents the winner of 3 Emmys and 2 Golden Globes.
Daddy, he makes me have sex with him. She's lying!
The highly acclaimed movie, Something About Amelia.
How could you do that?
A movie too important to miss.
I hate you for what you did! I hate you for it!
Glenn Close.
I am not allowed to speak with my own child.
He obviously wanted her more than he wanted me.
Ted Danson. And in her Emmy-winning role, Roxana Zoll. Something About Amelia. Next.
Okay, now is the point in the video where things turn dark, because these top 10 movies tackle some insanely serious topics. Coming in at number 10 is Something About Amelia, which first aired on ABC on January 9th, 1984. The network then aired it again 2 years later. This movie is about the psychological trauma in a family due to a father SAing his daughter. This was the first time a TV movie approached such a taboo topic head-on, and 17 million viewers tuned in to watch the first airing. Anticipating a flood of telephone calls, the network had its affiliates line up local social service agencies and then flash their phone numbers on screen at the end of the movie for children or parents personally concerned about the topic. Something About Amelia starred Ted Danson, Glenn Close, Roxana Zoll, and Missy Francis. It received 8 Emmy nominations and won 3, including Outstanding Drama or Comedy Special. Zoll's parents gave her the option of taking the role of 13-year-old Amelia, and she filmed it during the summer before she entered 9th grade in real life. Zoll ended up winning an Emmy for her performance. At the time, she told People magazine, quote, "I just hope Amelia helps one person. If it does, I'll feel I really, really accomplished something."
Tonight, a special 2-hour premiere presentation.
Surviving a Family in Crisis was an ABC made-for-TV movie that first aired on February 10, 1985. This Romeo and Juliet-style tragedy had an amazing ensemble cast that included Gen Xers Zach Galligan, Molly Ringwald, Heather O'Rourke, and River Phoenix. This movie is all about the tragedy of teen suicide and the families that are left behind. Galligan and Ringwald play Rick and Lonnie, 2 teenagers who fall madly in love, but each one is struggling in their lives at home. Rick is a 17-year-old golden boy with a promising future who is idolized by his 2 younger siblings, played by Phoenix and O'Rourke, but he starts to spiral when he finds out that his dad is cheating on his mom. Lonnie is an only child with mental health issues who is troubled and withdrawn. She's trying to heal and move on after attempting to end her own life. And when Rick starts to act out, his dad blames his behavior on Lonnie and forbids him from seeing her. Surviving a Family in Crisis was originally shown as a 3-hour event as part of Sunday night ABC theater. Then a number of the network affiliates aired local programming about teen mental health and suicide after the movie. Ringwald and Galligan also appeared on the cover of People magazine that week, which featured an article about the same topic as the movie. One thing that stands out about this film is that 2 of the young actors, O'Rourke and Phoenix, died young in real life, and it's just heartbreaking.
David, starring Bernadette Peters and Matthew Lawrence, will continue in a moment. Based on a true story.
Be a good boy now when you listen to Daddy.
Charlie's taken Davy 1,000,000 times. Nothing's ever happened.
Oh, my God.
Mrs. Rothenberg, David will probably die.
Bernadette Peters.
Help me, please.
John Glover.
What did the kid do that made you want to hurt him?
I didn't want to do it.
I want to hold him so bad to tell him it's going to be all right, and I can't.
Tuesday, the incredible story of David.
David was a made-for-TV movie that first aired on ABC on October 25th, 1988. It starred Bernadette Peters, John Glover, and Matthew Lawrence in his very first TV film role, and it was based on a book written by Marie Rothenberg. This one is a horrific true story about a 6-year-old boy named David Rothenberg who is caught between 2 feuding divorced parents. He lived with his mother, Marie, but was kidnapped by his non-custodial father, Charles. The disturbed Charles takes David to California, but he soon realizes that he can't take care of his son alone. But instead of taking David back to his mother, Charles doused his little boy in kerosene and set him on fire while he slept in a hotel room. David shockingly survives, but receives 3rd-degree burns over 90% of his body. Like I said, this one is brutal, and it can be difficult to watch. I should also note that the outcome of this case was infuriating, but at least the sentencing laws were eventually changed. As the judge says in the movie, it's an insanely hideous crime with such an innocent victim. I promise it's gonna rip your heart into a million pieces. Glover later noted in an interview that playing Charles Rothenberg was the most difficult role of his career. Just like with all of the other movies on this list, you can find a link to it in the description below. MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, first aired on NBC on March 14, 1983. It tells the true story of California homemaker Candy Lightner, played by Mariette Hartley, whose daughter Carrie was killed by a hit-and-run drunk driver in Fair Oaks, California on May 3, 1980. I actually watched this one for the first time in the early 90s when I was in a driver's ed class, and I'll never forget it. The loss of her daughter was difficult enough for Candy, as you can imagine, but what's really jarring in this movie is the attitude of the police and lawmakers in the wake of Carrie's death. At the time, drunk driving and vehicular homicide laws were just insane. Candy finds out that the man who killed her daughter had actually been released from jail just 2 days before the incident. He was actually out on bail from another drunk driving arrest. And that's because drunk driving was not taken seriously at the time among law enforcement or in the judicial system or by lawmakers. The man who killed Carrie was pretty much facing probation, and the worst case scenario was 2 years in prison. This sparked a fire in Candy, and she became an anti-drunk driving activist who relentlessly lobbied her state representatives and talked to any journalist who was willing to share her story. Eventually, she forms the organization Mothers Against Drunk Driving. MAD started to spread nationwide by 1981, which led to members picketing just about every state capital. Candy worked tirelessly to change the drunk driving laws in California, and then she went to Washington, D.C. As a result of her efforts, President Ronald Reagan created the Presidential Commission on Drunk Driving on April 14, 1982. That same year, the Howard Barnes Alcohol Traffic Safety Law was passed. This important piece of legislation provided $125 million in state grants to incentivize the lowering of the legal blood alcohol limit from 0.15 to 0.1, to revoke the licenses of drunk drivers, along with many other drunk driving countermeasures. Why Me is another made-for-TV movie based on a true story, and this one first aired on ABC on March 12, 1984. It starred Glynis O'Connor and Armand Assante and tells the story of Leola May Harmon and Dr. James Stallings. The movie begins in 1968 when Harmon, an Air Force nurse, was pregnant and about to leave the military. But she gets into a horrible car accident caused by a drunk driver and loses her baby. Her face is also horribly disfigured due to the crash. But the trauma doesn't stop there. The drunk driver receives leniency because drunk driving laws were so ridiculously lax before the 1980s. And this leads to severe depression and the breakup of Harmon's marriage. She's then placed into the care of Air Force surgeon James Stallings, who takes an interest in her case and helps her get her life back on track. He fights with the Air Force's medical bureaucracy to repair Harmon's face by using radical procedures over the course of 20 reconstructive surgeries. Oh, and the two of them also fall in love. I probably should mention that part. They got married in 1971, and that's where the story ends in the movie, on a happy note, which honestly is a bit odd considering what happened afterward. Harmon and Stallings were only married for 5 years before they divorced. They both went on to marry again and continue their respective medical careers, but each one died young under very sad circumstances. Stallings became a pioneer in vocal reconstructive surgery and was a highly sought-after plastic and voice surgeon. But after he was diagnosed with Epstein-Barr syndrome in the late 80s, he took his own life in 1991. Leola May Harmon died in 1998 of multiple organ failure.
Tonight on the CBS Saturday Night Movie.
Okay, so we are deep into the true stories at this point, and it's not going to stop until we get to number 1. At number 5 on my list is Shattered Innocence, which premiered on CBS on March 9, 1988. This movie starred Jonna Lee as Kansas high school cheerleader Pauline Anderson, who moves to Los Angeles after she graduates with hopes for a life in Hollywood. But things quickly take a dark turn for this naive, all-American girl when she gets a job doing nude modeling, which introduces her to the world of Playboy, Hustler, adult films, and cocaine. Lots of cocaine. Of course, this absolutely shatters her mother, who is played by A Christmas Story star Melinda Dillon, It takes less than 2 years for Pauline to absolutely spiral, and the story ends in tragedy when she is just 20 years old. This movie is a dramatization of the life of Colleen Applegate, a Minnesota cheerleader who moved to Hollywood and became porn star Shauna Grant. I first watched this movie as a Midwestern teenager myself, and wow, did it stick with me. If you are interested in the true story of Colleen Applegate, there is a PBS Frontline documentary from 1987 called Death of a Corn Queen that I highly recommend. I put the links to the movie and the documentary in the description below.
Monday, NBC presents another world premiere movie. They were a loving, happy family until their son disappeared.
I've searched the whole mall and I can't find him.
Every parent's fear becomes the movie you must see.
Whatever happens, I love you. We'll go on.
Starring Hill Street Blues' Daniel J. Travanti. Monday at 9, 8 Central and Mountain.
Oh man, this is a big one. Adam was an NBC made-for-TV movie that first aired on October 10th, 1983, with over 22 million people watching. It starred Daniel J. Travanti and Jo Beth Williams as John and Reve Walsh, whose 6-year-old son Adam was abducted from a Sears in Hollywood, Florida in July 1981. His partial remains were found 2 weeks after he disappeared. The movie had such a big cultural impact that it was rebroadcast again on April 30th, 1984, and on April 29th, 1985. It also had a sequel called Adam, His Song Continues. Links to both movies are in this video's description. It would be difficult to find a Gen Xer who isn't familiar with the story of Adam Walsh and this TV movie. Just like Candy Lightner with her daughter's death leading to the creation of MAD, Adam Walsh's death turned his father John into an activist who created both the Adam Walsh Resource Center and the Center for Missing and Exploited Children. At the end of each broadcast of Adam, they would show a series of photographs of missing children, along with a telephone number for viewers to call if they had information. The 1985 broadcast actually featured President Ronald Reagan introducing the photos, and he told the audience, "Maybe your eyes can help bring them home." After the 1983 broadcast, thousands of people called, and 13 of the 55 missing children were found, including future rapper Bizzy Bone, whose real name is Brian Anthony McCain. The former member of Bone Thugs-n-Harmony was abducted by his father when he was 4 years old. John Walsh went on to create and host the TV show America's Most Wanted, and both him and his wife Reve continued to be advocates for children more than 40 years later. However, I do have to point out the numbers John Walsh quoted in the movie when he says that 1.5 million children are reported missing every year and 50,000 disappear without a trace. Well, those numbers were never substantiated or proven in any way. This is actually addressed in the sequel, but only with a couple of lines of dialogue. I have to bring this up because John Walsh's activism spread false information, and that sparked the stranger danger panic of the 1980s. These numbers are insanely overblown because the definition of a missing child is a child whose caretakers were concerned and alarmed for at least 1 hour while trying to locate them. It included situations like runaways and family abductions. So when you take all of this into account, the number of abducted children by strangers is around 100 kids a year. I don't say this to downplay the issue or to insult the Walshes. What they went through was horrific, but these skewed statistics and their activism literally changed the way 80s kids were raised. We went from having PSAs telling parents it's 10 p.m., do you know where your children are, to stranger danger, kids on milk cartons, and fingerprinting kits with current photos just in case your kid got kidnapped. It started a mass panic, and it ended the days of the free-range child. Still, Adam is a powerful movie that will make a grown man cry. It's definitely worth the watch. The Walshes have done some amazing things on behalf of kids, like the Code Adam program in big retailers. This story literally changed American culture.
Okay,
On October 2nd, 1989, NBC aired the biographical drama A Cry for Help, the Tracy Thurman story, starring Nancy McKeon and Dale Midkiff. It was based on the real-life story of homemaker Tracy Thurman that took place in Torrington, Connecticut in the early 80s and the 1985 court case Thurman versus City of Torrington. Thurman, played by McKeon, sued the city and the police department for failing to protect her from her abusive husband, Charles Buck Thurman Sr., played by Midkiff. The movie shows how Tracy met and fell for Buck, then they get married and start a family. But he turns out to be insanely abusive and she becomes a repeated victim of domestic violence. Tracy leaves Buck, but he continues to harass her even after she gets a restraining order. She calls the police repeatedly and tries to convince them that she is in danger. They refuse to take her seriously as Buck's physical and emotional abuse escalates. Eventually, Buck viciously attacks Tracy. He beat her and stabbed her multiple times, leaving her for dead, and he literally did it in front of the police. Miraculously, she survived. Tracy then decides to sue and a legal battle ensues. Her case leads to the adoption of a law to help prevent similar situations. I will never forget this movie. It's a powerful film that depicts the horror Tracy endured and showcases how she was a pioneer in the fight for domestic abuse victims and their protection.
External post check 9. The President is presently in direct communication.
Current Soviet tactics poison.
Current world intelligence situation, and you might pay particular note to the nuclear submarines off the east and west coasts.
Having already captured NATO advanced positions.
Hey, any of you guys hear anything about an alert?
I really don't think either side wants to be the first to use a nuclear device.
It's not a question of who, but where. East Germany sealed off the borders to West Berlin.
It's not gonna happen.
Principal West German access corridors.
People crazy, but not that crazy.
I don't believe this is happening.
We have a massive attack against the U.S. at this time. ICBMs. Over 300 missiles inbound now.
Either we fired first and they're going to try to hit what's left. But they fired first and we just got our missiles out of the ground in time. This is not an exercise.
1 millisecond takes you beyond imagining, beyond tomorrow, and into the day after.
All right, friends, we have made it to the best and most memorable made-for-TV movie of the 1980s, according to me, and as well as many, many others. When it comes to cultural impact, The Day After simply can't be matched. The Day After first aired on November 20th, 1983, and more than 100 million people tuned in. It scored a 46 rating and a 62% share of the viewing audience. That was nearly half the American population at the time. I cannot put into words what a big deal this movie was. It is still one of the highest rated TV movies in US history. Directed by Nicholas Meyer, who had just completed Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, The Day After was a war film about a fictional conflict between NATO and the Warsaw Pact over Germany that escalates into full-scale nuclear war between the United States and the Soviet Union. It had an ensemble cast that included Jo Beth Williams, Steve Guttenberg, John Lithgow, Jason Robards, and John Cullum. The action focused on the residents of Lawrence, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri, and that really hits home for me. I graduated from KU and lived in Kansas City after college. This movie was actually filmed in Lawrence and Kansas City, as well as the family farms that are near American missile silos. Did you know those were in the Midwest? It's true. This movie was such a big deal in Lawrence. Not only was the movie filmed on location at KU and on Mass Street, among other places around town, but they also cast locals in the majority of the speaking roles. Casting calls for speaking parts and extras were placed in the local paper, the Lawrence Journal World, and KU professors from the film and theater department were in charge of the local casting process. Out of the 80 speaking roles, only 15 were cast in Los Angeles.
This elaborate scene takes place in Allen Fieldhouse on the campus of the University of Kansas. Here, Steve Guttenberg, one of the film's Hollywood actors, searches for a friend in the gym, which has been set up as an emergency hospital.
You obviously are going to use a lot of people from this area.
We can't make it without it. This movie is made by the people, of the people, and for the people. Everybody's got to be in it.
And cut! Print!
The Day After was first an idea of ABC Motion Picture Division President Brandon Stoddard after he watched the movie The China Syndrome. He was so impressed by that film that he wanted to make a TV movie that explored the effects of nuclear war on the United States. The title came from the network's executive vice president of television, movies, and miniseries, Stu Samuels, to emphasize the movie was not about nuclear war itself, but the aftermath. This wasn't a Hollywood disaster movie, it was instead a story about the facts of nuclear war at the time. To show how nuclear war could play out and affect the average American citizen, they used state-of-the-art special effects. Months of research and work alongside the Department of Defense led to heated arguments over the elements of the script that network censors wanted to cut. The DoD only agreed to cooperate if the ABC script clarified that the Soviets launched their missiles first. Prior to its premiere, The Day After received a large promotional campaign, and ABC distributed over 500,000 viewers' guides that discussed the dangers of nuclear war. It also prepared viewers for the graphic scenes, like the mushroom clouds and the burn victims. However, because the film was eventually cut down from 4 hours to 2 and made to be a one-night-only event, many special effects scenes were edited out of the movie. ABC really toned it down to reduce the body count and the number of burn victims. Some of the footage was added back for the movie's release on home video. Oh, and when the movie was originally broadcast, the voice of the president when he addresses the nation was an imitation of Ronald Reagan, who watched the film a month before its premiere and was reportedly deeply moved by it. He wrote in his diary that the movie was very effective and left him greatly depressed. It also apparently changed his mind on the prevailing policy on nuclear war. In subsequent broadcasts, the president's voice was overdubbed to not sound like Reagan and instead was using a stock actor. There is so much trivia associated with The Day After, I could talk about it for hours, but I promise I'll start to wind it down here. If you want to watch the movie, I provided a link in the description. As I showed at the start of this video, the original broadcast began with a warning from John Cullum. ABC and local affiliates also opened 1-800 hotlines with counselors on standby. After the nuclear attack scenes, there were no more commercial breaks for the rest of the movie, and then there was a live debate afterward on ABC's Viewpoint that was hosted by Ted Koppel. The debate featured scientist Carl Sagan, former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara, and commentator William F. Buckley, among others. Oh, and one more thing. The Day After was broadcast on Soviet state television in 1987 during the negotiations of the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, which was signed by President Reagan and Soviet Premier Mikhail Gorbachev. This resulted in the banning and reducing of their nuclear arsenals. The Day After was also released theatrically around the world, and a British copycat version titled Threads premiered on the BBC in 1984. So, what do you think about my picks for the 15 best and most memorable TV movies of the 1980s? I know there are so many more to talk about, and I will do that in my summer video series where I will break down the best year by year, each one getting their own video from 1980 to 1989. So be on the lookout for those videos. And remember, if you are thinking about miniseries, I have 2 videos about the best of the 80s, and there's another one in the works. Alright, I'm done talking. Thanks so much for watching. Hit like and subscribe and the notification bell so you'll know when I drop my next video and when I go live. Okay, bye!